G'day folks, welcome to the channel that helps you to distinguish between the truth and error. In this video, I want to play you a clip by a Muslim called Mohammad Hijab who is trying to convince a Christian at Speaker's Corner that the Bible teaches a flat earth. And he quotes a number of Bible verses. He quotes one from the book of Job, one from the book of Psalms, one from the book of Acts, and one from the book of Matthew. And what I want to do is I want to play you this clip, and then afterwards I want to go through each of those verses and show you what they really mean and how they do not teach a flat earth. But in addition to that, I want to show you from the Quran that the Quran actually teaches a flat earth. Now, to be fair to this Christian man, it's impossible for a Christian to be prepared to defend, anything at random from the Bible, because the Bible is a huge book. The Bible is a massive book compared to the Quran. The Quran is only very, very tiny when you compare it to the Bible. And so to expect a Christian to be ready at any point to defend everything in the Bible is very difficult. And sometimes we need to spend some time studying the passage in order to understand what it means. But these Muslims at Speaker's Corner, what they do is they get a couple of arguments together, then they look for an unsuspecting Christian who's probably not ready for those verses, and then they spring it on them and they don't have an answer and they think they look amazing compared to this Christian. But when you look at the verses carefully, they do not teach what this Muslim guy is trying to say. Let's get right into it. Here's the clip from Mohammad Hijab.
So the earth is round. There are some verses in the Bible that indicate the fact that the earth is flat.
Where is that?
Alright. So if you look at the book of Job, chapter number 9, verse number 6, it says that the earth is not only flat, but it can be shaken out of its pillars. So the earth has pillars. The depiction of the biblical earth is that it's flat and that it has pillars, like a table. Alright? In the book of Matthew, chapter number 8, verse number 4, as you very well know, Jesus was taken to the top of a very high mountain, and it said that he saw all the kingdoms of the earth. That must mean that the earth is flat. Because,
is that your understanding?
yeah, because you have Australia on the other side. If you look at, for example, the book of Psalms, chapter number 73, chapter number 75, verse number 3. It once again talks about the earth being flat and having pillars. If you look at the book of Acts, chapter number 10, verse number 11, it talks about a big sheet coming from Peter was talking, it said a big sheet comes from the sky and it covers all four corners of the earth. So it's very clear here that the biblical depiction of the earth is a flat earth. If you truly believe that the earth is round, you have to be a Muslim.
No, I'm not.
Because if you are sticking to the fact that the earth is round, yet believe in the scripture that tells you clearly that the earth is flat and has pillars, and there's no other way of interpreting this, then that would be a contradiction in the way you apply your standards.
That's how you see it.
How do you see it?
I see it, like I said, the world is round.
So chapter 9 verse 6 of Job. I'm not trying to, look, honestly, you're a nice guy. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. Okay?
You're not going to hurt my feelings.
Please, yeah? Look, seek is the truth and the truth shall free, alright?
It's a parable. That's how I see it.
As you see it as a parable.
Absolutely.
Alright, then bring it.
You don't understand.
That's fine. I might not understand it. You're here to help me understand it.
I don't.
That's fine. You don't understand that.
No, I don't.
Fine. So you're understanding enough to say it's a parable.
Yes.
But go ahead and look at, if you want to look at Psalms chapter number 75, verse number 3. Bring that up, please. You don't need to be.
When the earth and all the people quake, it is I who hold its pillars firm. Selah. And
so God holds the pillars of the earth. Its pillars. The earth has pillars in the Bible. The earth has pillars in the Bible. Pillars mean, you know what a pillar is, my friend?
it's a thin lump of concrete, yeah?
Yes, that's right. Because the depiction of the biblical earth is flat. It could be, because it says the circle of the earth in the Bible. It could be a disc, but it also has pillars. Tell me, is that correct, you think?
What's that?
Is the Bible flat and has pillars?
What's that?
Is the earth flat and has pillars?
I don't know.
Do you agree with that?
I don't know. I can't answer.
Is the earth round or not? Do you agree with the Bible, or do you agree with the fact that the earth is round?
I have to agree with it's round, but you're going about its pillars.
What pillars mean is like a table. You know a table? You've seen a table before, yeah? A table is some something which is like this and it has legs. So pillars act as stabilizers, right? They work only with flat objects.
So it's not a parable.
It's not a parable. It's more than one verse. If it was one verse, we could say it's a parable. But
It's not a parable.
well, you tell me what it is.
You saying the earth is a pillar?
In the Bible, yeah.
If that's what you believe.
No, not the earth is a pillar. That is supported by pillars.
If that's what you believe, that's what you believe.
Do you believe in that?
I said the earth is round.
The earth is round. So you believe in the Quran then?
No, I don't believe in that.
Because the Quranic scripture, out of the three Abrahamic religions, are the only ones, is the only scripture that has a verse in the Quran, or verses in the Quran that can be interpreted in a way to suggest that the earth is round, and the only scripture which has scholars predating 1,000 years ago saying that the earth is round. So it's not us superimposing this narrative, scientific narrative, it's the truth which people of that time had identified.
Now, before I look at the Bible verses that were raised, let me first read to you from the Quran and also read to you a couple of hadiths. If you go to Surah 71, Ayah 19, the Quran says this, "And Allah has made the earth for you as a carpet spread out." Clearly, according to the Quran, the earth is like a spread out carpet. That's what the Quran says. The earth is flat like a spread out carpet. That's what it says in your Quran. Also in Surah 78, if you go to Surah 78, Ayah 6 and 7, it says this, "Have we not made the earth as a wide expanse and the mountains as pegs?" Clearly the Quran is saying that the earth is like a wide expanse and the mountains are like pegs holding it down. It's like a wide carpet and the mountains are like pegs holding down the carpet. That's what the Quran teaches. But in addition to that, you have the hadiths. Listen to these hadiths. Sahih Bukhari, book 46, hadith 15, narrated by Salim's father, Abdullah, the Prophet said, "Whoever takes a piece of land of others unjustly, he will sink down the 7 earths on the day of resurrection." So according to that hadith, there are 7 earths, one underneath each other. And when on the day of judgment, if you've taken land unjustly from someone, you will sink down the 7 earths. Clearly, that implies a flat earth. Let me read to you from Sahih Muslim. Sahih Muslim 416904. Thaban reported that Allah's Messenger said, "Allah drew the ends of the world near one another for my sake, and I have seen its eastern and western ends." So according to both the Quran and the Hadiths, Islamic teaching is that the earth is flat. And I don't think there's any way around that. If you're going to try to find a way to reinterpret those verses, then you've got to be pretty lenient with the Bible too. But let's have a look first of all at this passage in the book of Job. It's not Job, it's Job. That's how you say it. Now, we have to understand that both Job and Psalms, that's poetic literature. Okay? It's not parables, that's not quite right. It is poetic literature, it's poetry. It's not meant to be a scientific textbook. It's not giving you a set of facts. It's poetry. That's the first thing you need to understand. And really in the context here, Job is giving a defense to his friends about why he's suffering. And he's saying, look, I agree that God is just and God will only punish the wicked and he's not going to punish the righteous. And he says, I can't argue with God despite his suffering. I can't argue. And he talks about the wisdom of God and the mighty power of God. And this is poetry, remember. Now in verse 6, when it uses the word earth, that doesn't automatically mean the entire earth. It can be referring to the ground beneath your feet. It can be referring to the land in which you live. The word in Hebrew has many meanings and it doesn't automatically mean the entire earth. That's the first thing. Secondly, this word pillars doesn't necessarily mean, in fact, very few times is it used to refer to something holding something else up. Most of the time it's just a pillar or even a mound of rocks. So for example, the first handful of times the word is used is when the Bible describes God leading the children of Israel in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. So it's not holding anything up, it's a pillar. The next bunch of times it's used, it's referring to the pillars that set the boundaries around the tabernacle. That's, a big chunk of time times that the word pillar is used, it's referring to that. Another time it can be just a mound of rocks built up to mark a monument of something that happened, or to be a witness of an agreement or something like that. So it's not holding anything up there at all. Even in buildings, pillars were really a lot of the time on the outside, and they were decorative. They were decorative to mark the boundaries. There's a big emphasis on that in the ancient world. Now, have a look at the Bible background commentary. You'll see some great notes on how that's used, how pillars are used in the ancient Near Eastern world. But when we look at this in context, maybe we can start in verse 5. It says, God is the one who removes the mountains. They know not how when he overturns them in his anger. The one who shakes the earth out of its place, and its pillars tremble. So there's a couple of ways that we could understand this passage. We have to always remember that this is poetry. This is poetry. And I think here that the word pillars could refer to the mountains that are just mentioned. God can remove the mountains if he wants. And that could just be referencing the shaking, the moving of the mountains. And so it's kind of repeating itself in verse 6, saying that God who shakes the earth, who shakes the ground, and its pillars tremble, referring to the mountains. So that's a perfectly natural way to interpret it if you understand the words earth and pillars in the ways that I have described. In addition to that, the pillars could have been kind of on the outskirts, or kind of the boundaries of the land in which Job lived. In that sense, they would be pillars because they're the boundaries of the land in which Job lives. But also the word pillars can also refer to prominent people of stature in the land that he lives. You know, we see that used in 1 Samuel in Hannah's prayer. It's also used in Galatians chapter 2 verse 9 when the apostles are referred to as pillars in the church. So it can refer to poetically to people of stature. So this is the pillars here could be referring to people, mighty people of the land being shaken at the power of God. It's poetry. You have to remember it's poetry. Now, if you go to chapter 26, it's interesting because in verse 7 it says, he, referring to God, stretches out the north over what is formless, this is heaven being stretched out, and hangs the earth on nothing. So according to the Bible, the earth is hung on nothing, which is exactly what we see. The earth is hung literally on nothing. What about this passage in Psalms chapter 75, Psalm 75:3? Let's have a quick look there. The earth and all that dwell in it melt. It is I who have firmly set its pillars. Now again, the word pillars here could simply be mountains. It could just simply be a reference to mountains. But in the context here, we're talking about people. It's talking about God judging the boastful and people that are wicked and raising up their horn against God and so forth. It's poetic literature. Psalms is poetic literature. And it could be again that this word pillars is being applied to prominent, powerful people in the earth or in the land in which the psalmist is living, or the land in which the psalmist's enemies are living. And he's saying, look, it's God that sets people firmly in power. It could be saying that. And that's very clear. Elsewhere in the Bible, it talks about God raising up kings and bringing kings down and so forth. So this could be simply a poetic reference to powerful people in the land in which the psalmists live, or the land in which the psalmist's enemies live, or it could be simply a reference to the mountains. You don't have to automatically interpret this as referring to pillars of flat earth underneath, pillars underneath a flat earth. I don't think you automatically have to interpret it that way. And at the end of the day, it is poetic literature. Now, what about this passage in Acts 10? I was really quite surprised when I just opened up Acts 10. It didn't even remotely say what he was suggesting it said. Acts chapter 10, verse 11, it says, "And I saw heaven open up, and an object like a great sheet coming down, lowered by 4 corners to the ground." That doesn't say anything about the earth having 4 corners. So, and remember, this is a vision he's having. This is a vision. Now, there are some passages that talk about the 4 corners of the earth. That's fine. Sometimes that can be translated the 4 quadrants of the earth. That's one of the points that Mike Winger makes in his video. And really, if you want an in-depth study of the flat earth, go and check out Mike Winger's video. It's really, really good. There's great arguments there. Have a look at this last passage in Matthew chapter 4. Matthew chapter 4, verse 8, and it says, "Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory." I want you to notice here that it says not only that the devil showed him all the kingdoms of the world, but he showed them their glory. Now, no Jew or Israelite or anybody in the ancient world would honestly believe that you can see Babylon and Egypt and Assyria from the top of a mountain, right? Persia from the top of a mountain, right? No person in the ancient world is going to believe that that's what this is saying. I think this is most likely referring to Satan giving him a vision, showing him a vision, not only the kingdoms of the world, but all of their glory. That implies detail. Let me show you in Luke chapter 4. This is interesting, and we'll talk about why he's on a high mountain in a moment. But if we go to Luke chapter 4, this is Luke's account of the same story. He says, "And he led him up and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time." It's like all the kingdoms of the world are flashing before him. All the kingdoms of the world and their glory are flashing before him. And the devil is asking him to bow down and worship him. He says, "Look, I'll give you all of this," it says, "if you bow down and worship me." Which leads me to why Satan brought him on a high mountain. Because if you're familiar with the Old Testament, you would know that the ancient Israelites and also the pagan cultures would worship their idols and false gods in the high places. That's what it says all through the Old Testament and the prophets and so forth. And you read 1st and 2nd Kings, you'll see that come up again and again, that they worship these false gods in the high places. And Satan has brought Jesus up to the high places in the same way he tempted him in the wilderness to turn the stones into bread. And Jesus said, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." He succeeded in where Israel failed when they grumbled against him, grumbled against God when they were hungry. In the same way, he's being tested again with regards to idolatry. And he's being brought to the high places where the people of Israel worshipped false gods, and is being tested and is being shown all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time and their glory. Obviously, this is some sort of vision that is being cast before Jesus. So in all of these scriptures, I don't think any of them necessarily teach that we must believe in a flat earth. I think the Quran, I think those verses spread out like a carpet. I don't know how you're going to get around that one. The earth is spread out like a carpet according to the Quran. But if Mohammad Hijab is willing to kind of bend the meaning of those verses in such a way as to allow for a spherical earth, then you have to do the same with the Bible. You have to do the same with the Bible. And so therefore, Mohammad Hijab is clearly wrong when he's claiming that the Bible teaches a flat earth. I hope you've liked this video. If you have, please consider subscribing. Give me a thumbs up. Hit the bell notification button. I'll see you in the comment section, and you'll see me in my next video.